Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get started now, if you will, please. And Lonnie, do you see anyone else coming in at this time?
Not at this time, no.
Okie dokie. Ask Councilman Dr. Proctor, do you see that we have a quorum, sir?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we do, sir.
Thank you so much. A quorum being here, then I declare this meeting open. I'm going to ask Lonnie Waters, if you will, please, lead us in an invocation.
Lord, I thank you for the opportunity to gather together. Lord, we just ask you to watch over everyone that has already been affected by the storms or anyone that's in front of the storms. We ask you to guide them to where there'll be the least damage and least fatalities or anything. Lord, we just ask you for this favor. And watch over this meeting tonight as we go through it, and bless all of our administration and citizens here. Amen.
Amen. And I'm going to ask Councilwoman Ann Snavy, if you would, please lead us in our...
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And before we start, I want to thank all of you for attending tonight. We greatly appreciate your coming out, especially in this type of weather. We will have a short public hearing here tonight, and the applicant will speak for about 10 minutes if he so desires, or if they so desire. And then anyone or everyone in this room will have an opportunity to voice what they want to voice to our city council tonight. So with that being said, we will start. Council, you have in front of you the agenda for tonight. I think that has been mailed out to everyone. And I would entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Move we adopt the agenda as distributed.
Thank you. In a second, please. Have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion by council? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Item 6 is new business, and under that we have public hearing, request to rezone particle JA13 from R1 to R3, located between 74 and 154 Georgianna Street in Jasper, Georgia. And to begin this, I will ask our city manager, Brandon Douglas, if he will bring this to us.
Sir, Mr. Mayor, Council, and for the public, we do have a scheduled public hearing. Just to kind of put this in background, the property owner and applicant had a pre-application meeting with staff, whereupon they kind of gave us some preliminary ideas what they had wanted to achieve. Subsequently, they submitted a packet whereupon they were requesting for rezoning from R1 to R3 for the purposes of a multifamily development. You do have the application in front of you. You do also have a staff report that was generated in accordance with our zoning ordinance. As you are aware, we do have certain criteria that we adhere to with respect to the 9 points that we follow in reviewing any sort of amendments to the zoning map. As such, we did have a public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission on Tuesday evening of this week, the 23rd at 6 p.m. The report that you have in front of you is what was presented to the commission members as well as to the public. We did update the staff report to reflect a synopsis of the Planning and Zoning meeting, not to preclude anyone in the public from making those same comments, but just to give you a recap of some of the points that have been made. Just to kind of go through, since you do have this report in front of you, and hopefully you've had some time to look at it when it was sent out last night, but essentially this particular application is in the actual traditional neighborhood character area as it borders the East Jasper Gateway Corridor with respect to the comprehensive plan and the future development map. There are certain elements of the comp plan with respect to housing, transportation, natural and cultural resources, as well as community facilities and land use. This particular land use in the comprehensive plan does entail that request a mix of residential uses and densities, promote and preserve the neighborhood's existing architectural style and scale, increase pedestrian connectivity through sidewalks, trails, accommodate infill that complements the existing area, and preserve existing mature trees during development in open space and greenway. With respect to the second bullet, it does talk about is this use a general suitable for the site compared to other uses. This proposed rezoning is generally suitable for the site based on adjacent land uses, insomuch as there are C2 uses as well as R1 and R3 that does abut this nearly 10 acres. With respect to adversely affecting the economic values of the uses, the property is currently zoned R1. The proposed use is adjacent to other R1 uses in R3 as well as C2. So I will tell you that from a staff perspective, and I'm not an economist or real estate appraiser or anything, but it does cause some challenges when you are looking at the economic values with respect to a mix of uses with respect to another use that is compatible with one of those said uses. The property to be affected by the proposed amendment, can it be used as it's currently zoned? It is currently zoned R1, therefore it does meet the appropriate lot sizes for an R1 with respect to the minimum lot size requirements, so it could be used in its current zoning. With respect to causing excessive burden on existing streets, schools, sewers, water resources, police, and fire protection of the utilities, I did point out at the planning and zoning meeting that we have been working with USDA and our consultant to try to expand our capacity at our wastewater pollution control plant. That in and of itself, we are nearing capacity. However, I do think that hopefully we can correlate and schedule the completion of those improvements. We are doubling the size of the plant for the ability to continue providing the services to the community. You do have an existing parcel of land that is undeveloped, so by virtue of that, there will be extra calls for service relative to police and fire. That is something that is important to analyze, that calls for services generally are higher with respect to multifamily in terms of the densities involved. So that is taken into consideration in terms of evaluating. To what extent that is something that's uniquely geographically located with respect to other type of developments. The streets is a concern with respect to you do have it in a traditional neighborhood character area, so by virtue of that, the streets in and of themselves as they connect to other state highways or other main roads may not be very compatible for an increased volume of traffic. However, as you'll see later on in a moment, that had been expressed by through the public hearing. With respect to any sort of property that's vacant as zoned, if it's been vacant for a while, and whether it's been marketed and just could not sell its current use, staff is unaware of if it had been marketed, so I cannot comment on any length of time that it may or may not have been marketed and is perhaps needing to have a rezoning. The change requested, is it out of scale with the needs of the city as a whole or the immediate neighborhood? Once again, due to the mix of zoning uses that abut this particular parcel, It does not appear to be too terribly out of character with respect to adjacent R3 properties and C2. Are there adequate sites for the proposed use that can be permitted on properties already appropriately zoned? Based upon the existing zoning map, staff is unaware of an adequate number of sites already appropriate zoned. Once again, when you are asking for a higher density of zoning, typically if there are sites that are already zoned in that manner, historically most persons try those sites because they're already pad ready or zoning ready. Are there any other conditions or transitional patterns affecting the use and development? We are unaware of any conditions or patterns that would inhibit the use of the property. As was documented at this report as well as P&Z, there is a swell or some sort of blue line that would need to be further explored just to ensure. We have not delved into that particular matter extensively at this moment. Based on the analysis of this application, staff did recommend approval with the conditions as contained in your report with respect to the zoning ordinance, Article 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, zoning ordinance or city code of ordinances 18, 26, and 70. Those, as I illustrated at the P&Z, are merely just the development standards that the applicant, developer would have to adhere to if this is favorably considered and moves forward. Any proposed site plan would have to adhere and follow all the standards with respect to development. You'll notice in your staff report the couple of paragraphs from the planning and zoning meeting. I'll just kind of hit the bullets so that if in fact there are things that I missed from the meeting or staff missed from the meeting, the public can speak on that. Once again, they're not precluded from speaking on anything they may have said Tuesday evening. But traffic is a major concern for the general area, as the proposed density is 96 units. There was concern of 100 plus more vehicles being in the area that was articulated as being congested already and perhaps unaccommodating roads, not designed to handle the volume of traffic. And would there need to be some sort of traffic study or traffic signal or any other improvements if this were to move forward? Another comments related to the intended land use with regards to the ingress-egress. It was advised to staff prior to the meeting, and I think the developer has continued to address this matter since Tuesday, that one of the means of ingress-egress that had been identified on the site plan perhaps is not in availability now. So that would have to be addressed because based on the zoning ordinance, I believe between 41 and 150 units does require at least 2 means of access. Has the school system been engaged and what are their comments? Staff did reach out to the school system to solicit their comments after the meeting just to get them to provide anything. We do not have an update at this time. However, as part of the public hearing process and part of the due diligence, any new information will be articulated accordingly. Is the undeveloped land environmentally sensitive area? Should an environmental impact analysis or study be conducted? Staff did articulate that that was not something that we had in terms of a criteria or a requirement with respect of not knowing if there is a need. Stormwater was an issue that had been brought up. Staff's position would be that if this moves forward, favorably considered, as with any development project over a particular size, it has to go through the process of appropriate stormwater design and study. And then there was a question about any sort of space that was going to be donated to the city. staff articulated that any plans that the city had identified through the planning retreat this year in January, monies were to be allocated out of the 2020 SPLOST for development of a passive park area on the 4 acres that it currently owned, and had not engaged specifically as to any properties that were going to be considered for donating. That would just be a developer and or property owner decision. And then there were some sidewalks that had been discussed about needing, some fencing, security, things of that nature. So with respect to action made by the 2 members of the Planning Commission that were in attendance, they did not favorably recommend this moving forward. So with respect to that, Mr. Mayor, Council, I have no further comments.
Thank you, sir. And one consideration that I want to tell you tonight is that our job here as elected is to hear from you. We will not be voting on this tonight. That will be done at our next regular meeting. But tonight is our turn to listen to everything that you have to tell us and everything that the developer has to tell us also. So at this time, we will ask who is going to represent the serial. Okay, if you would,
sir. Yes, sir.
then please do so. Thank you.
Well, good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is Philip Searles. I'm the president of the Beverly J. Searles Foundation. Y'all might remember from last year. I had another site over off Old Philadelphia Road that I was trying to zone for another housing development that unfortunately did not go through. The zoning did, funding didn't. Want to kind of talk a little bit about how we got to where I am today on this site, and then talk to you why we like this site and why we think this will be supportive within the current zoning forward. Every year we identify, we look over all over the state trying to find new opportunities to do multifamily developments. We, on average, will assess between 50 and 80 different sites every year, different jurisdictions, different markets. Based on our knowledge from Jasper last year, we know there's a great need for housing in Jasper. We know there's a great need for housing for the residents of Jasper and Pickens County. And so we had an interest in here. We've been looking at other areas. While we've been approaching other areas across the state, we knew that our problem with our site last year would be consistent with this year, so we had to find something new. We wanted to find something that we felt like would be a benefit not only to an improvement within the community, but also as a benefit for our residents that are living there. We have to be the advocates for the people who will live there someday. So after trying to find a parcel of land in the city of Jasper that could support this type of density, as well as the location to the local amenities, this really became one of the very few sites that we actually could even put under contract, that we saw would even work for what our intended use would be. So we actually called the landowner. This wasn't, part of earlier when Brandon said if there was any marketing done, there hadn't been. We actually called him and told him what we wanted to do, and we've been in conversations ever since. What we like about it is not only is it close to the downtown, it's close to a lot of the amenities with the exception of y'all's hospital, which is south of us, but everything else is right around here. Our adjacent land uses, we do, like Brandon said, we have a lot of C2 on the north side of us. We have an R3 on the south side of us. We do have some single-family housing in the area as well. But looking through y'all's comp plan that the city did back in 2008, it called for roughly 2,200 new housing units. In the city of Jasper, the housing stock in Jasper at that point in time, 6% of it was multifamily. Since that plan in 2008, I believe y'all have only had one multifamily development occur over by the hospital. So there still is a shortage of multifamily stock in the city for people with Pickens. So we felt like we had a site that was consistent with some of the adjoining uses. We knew people would be upset because people are always upset when it comes to zoning. We get that. We felt like we're compliant with the comp plan for the address, for the identifying the address needs of what y'all have identified as what's needed in the city for potential growth. We also feel like the city's future use plan is consistent with our use. It does ask for a mix of densities in this neighborhood market. So we would be applying what we believe to be something consistent with existing surrounding uses, compliant with y'all's comp plan, and compliant with the future land use. Now, we were here Tuesday and we heard a lot of the folks kind of, having a lot of issues. The best thing one of the things I do want to bring up, and I don't believe I have any adjacent landowners here right now. One of the things, a nice mother got up and said that she has 2 kids, and what kind of fencing would there be to kind of appropriately, screen their house? And I do believe that good fences make good neighbors. What we would offer those homeowners that abut our property would be to we would pay for them to build a fence. Figured, you can look at my fence, which you might like, you might not like, or I'll build you whatever fence you want. I'll give you the money, but you can build whatever fence you want. That's something that we would offer all of our owner-occupied adjacent landowners. The other big issue Brandon brought up was the access. So when we first brought this up, we had, and as y'all can see, we had here that there was an access road that the city owned. According to y'all's GIS, the city owned this access. We were going to run that down to East Sellers, run it from a 3-way stop into a 4-way stop. Turns out the landowner actually was deeded the land from the city back in 1964. We would be approaching her as a potential avenue to get the second point of access. The other point we have, though, is actually this alley on our west side of the property that abuts into Effie and Cox. That is where my title attorney is looking into to make sure that y'all didn't give away that land as well at some point in time. But we believe that that alley is open. We have the land on the north side. We'd have to be able to acquire a little more land to be able to connect to those roads. And then speaking within y'all's own code compliance, we would be then improving either Cox or Effie, and most likely Cox, because Effie has a house that's only 2 feet off of y'all's right of way. So we'd most likely be improving Cox if we went this route, most likely be improving Cox to get down to East Sellers, drive that into a 2-lane road, curbed and guttered. And that would be our second point of ingress. While we don't have that solution right now, because again, my title's still looking at it, I know the cost associated with doing this. This is something that we would definitely be able to pick up. I do believe still that being able to get an easement or buy that land from the homeowner would probably be the more cost-effective and probably acceptable way within the community. But I do have options. As long as I have these options, I would like to keep my zoning application in front of council. If all options are exhausted, well, I don't have any options left, and I understand that. But while I do have options available, we're still trying to hunt them down. I would like to continue the discussion with council on the zoning side. I provided y'all some pictures of developments we have done to give you an idea of the quality, the caliber of the communities we developed. This is good quality housing. Good hard-working folk are going to live there. While I don't have 3-story walk-ups, my contractors have built, hundreds of them. To me, I'm more of the numbers guy. I can make the numbers work. I know how much it costs to build. I can put everything together. My contractors build these. I haven't done them, but I can. All of our units will have patios. We'll have all of our units will have our parking ratio is consistent with city ordinance right now. We have 2 spaces per unit. We have a playground for the kids. We would try to have space available and then bring in an after-school provider to do after-school programs for the kids in school. I would be very open as well as to buying a light that out there on 53 in Georgianna. Something that the neighborhood brought up as a traffic problem. If council requested as a condition of zoning to manufacture a traffic study, we can do that. I don't believe that our traffic impact would be significant compared to the overall usage in the area. But like I said, we can, as long as I don't have to go further into zoning, we can, taking more time, I can definitely provide something most likely by my second hearing that y'all would have. But again, I think either way, we'd be very open to buying a light for the city to put up there at East Georgiana, if that's something the city would want. Because I know that if the current residents have a problem taking a left out of Georgiana on the Church Street, my residents will too. So if I can do something to make that a safer intersection, I'd be all for it. I would ask if y'all have any questions, and I'll be here to answer them. Or is that not how it works? I don't know.
Council can ask any questions that they want to right now, if you have any for Mr. Cyril.
I'll defer until our council meeting, sir.
Okay. Okay. And at this time, thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
And now I'll ask for input from anyone in the room that wishes to address themselves to this issue. Please feel free to step up. Joe?
Is this normal to issue zoning before all the issues are resolved?
Is it normal to issue zoning before?
To change the zoning before you resolve the issues that he was talking about? Is that the way you normally do it?
Ordinarily, then, if the zoning was granted, then it would be incumbent upon the corporation to make certain that everything that had to be done was done before any work would be permitted.
So he has to go through all the, he gets the zoning before all these issues of traffic and erosion and runoff, and you're gonna add 200, there's probably not 200 cars in that whole zone now, but you're gonna add 200 cars to it. Almost every one of those apartments will have 2 vehicles.
I understand.
So I just was wanting to make sure that I understood where it all, how the procedure took place.
Yes, sir. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Please state your name. We know who Joe is.
I'm Marshall Dixon.
Marshall Dixon.
I'm Marshall Dixon too.
Yeah,
Thank you.
he's Big Marshall, I'm Little Marshall. But we live at 10 Cox Street, right there on the corner of Cox and Effie Street. And we have a few concerns. I'm a firefighter, and they said this was going to be a 3-story multi-family purpose structure. I work on a ladder company, and we're brought in for these type of structures, you know, for safety and everything like that. I just wanted everybody to be aware that the closest ladder truck that in the area would be in Cherokee County. Another thing is the city of Jasper is manning, on a shift, is manning 1 engine and 1 rescue. The rescue being for medical issues. So we kind of, you know, I don't know who's familiar with what's going on in, you know, the city of Jasper Fire Department right now. But, you know, even Pickens County doesn't even, you know, supply a ladder truck. Like I said, for safety, very, very important. The response time for the closest ladder truck would be almost 3 times the appropriate response time. If we were going to issue a second alarm, which required us to go to that extent. So I just wanted the safety concerns of that to be addressed as well.
Very good. And thank you. I think those are valid points that we all need to hear. I appreciate that. Anyone else at this time?
My name is Andrew Childers. I live on that Fox Mountain property.
Yes, ma'am.
Property where you're trying to potentially the other exit.
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
pretty sure that's a power line easement, but I'm not sure 100%. But Effie Street, where it curves down that road, washes it out. It was repaved a couple of years ago. It's gone in line, it washes out my driveway, which is non-existent. Cox Street, I don't know how you're going to expand that without taking people's property.
There's right of way. I'm sorry, I won't speak, but.
My house is right on the road, so I just wanted to mention that.
Okay, so would you tell council again, your number 1 concern here is?
That the roads will not accommodate there.
The road would not accommodate,
Because Effie turns to the box where they're
Uh-huh.
saying they want to come out. And where that curve, that road is washed out. And when it was all repaved and that curve, it washed out within a month. And then it comes down to my yard, which is not the issue here, but if they're gonna do something with parks, then have to do something with the Effie to fix that. I don't see that being feasible.
got it, got it. And thank you so much.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I apologize, if I may say,
Hold on one second now. We're going to let people in here talk first, if you don't mind, and it's their turn. So then at the end of that, if you want to come back and say something, I'll allow that, okay?
thank you, sir.
So any citizens, any other citizens have comments for us to listen to? Sir, ma'am, please recognize, stand up and be recognized.
My name's Joy Buell. We actually had the fire department to show up on Main Street today. We have an office that's on South Main. And it happens that probably once a month to once every 2 months for the apartments that are above. It would be east on South Main Street, those apartments. And when they got through going through, making sure that everything was okay, I just stopped one of the firemen and I asked him about the apartments that are over near the hospital. And I said, it's been rumored by a lot of people, we have patients who come in and we hear things all the time, that there's a lot of police traffic over there for domestic violence and drugs. And he says, it's just not a very nice place to live over there. So my concern is we're going to have the same problem over here because, Lord forgive me, I don't mean to, but if you're looking at a lower income, you're going to be inviting that sort of thing there. And I know we need it, but I'd rather see lower income housing than I would apartment complexes. You have more responsible people usually that'll be in a house. They're usually older, they're not teenagers, that sort of thing. So that was just something, a conversation that I had with him today, and I just wanted to bring that forth, that that's already that type of apartment complex over near the hospital. We're looking at doing that here, and they're beautiful. When they went up, I thought they were so pretty. So it's not that they're ugly or anything like that. They're very nice looking apartment complexes, but they have a lot of issues over there. And I just would hate to see that come into a residential area where you have housing.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate that. Any further comments?
I'll be late.
John Selsby,
John?
longtime resident of Pickens County. I'll just reiterate some of the points that I brought up on Tuesday. And like has been stated repeatedly, there's not a traffic capacity for 200 more cars in that neighborhood. That's just outrageous to think about. That problem would extend far beyond just widening Cox Street. Like Andrea pointed out, Effie Street would have to be widened as well, and you're talking about eating into Joe's property, you're talking about taking away the State Farm's parking lot. That doesn't seem feasible at all. Aside from the more practical matters, this is one of the more historic neighborhoods here in Jasper. And framing this whole thing as if it's bordering commercial property in another R3 zoned area. What used to be Bellwood, I'm not sure what that's called now, but that's been here since the early 60s as far as I know. So that's been here a long time. We all understand the issues that particular apartment complex has and has brought into that neighborhood since then. But this is kind of, seems to me like it's being framed as if there's all these new stores and apartments just popping up all around this particular piece of property, and that's simply not the case. In order to preserve the community and the feel that we all love about that neighborhood, it's important that we don't just haphazardly allow these things to come in here and run wild. The drainage issues on that particular piece of property, we can all go out there right now and take a look at the river that's flowing through there. You would have to do some major reconstruction of that entire area, and it's going to affect everybody downstream. The lady that lives down below Michelle, she was in here Tuesday night, I can't think of her name right now.
Miss Williams,
Yes, Miss Williams, absolutely. She brought up a very relevant point, that creek that runs through our backyard turns into a river, and I guarantee you it is a river right now, and that's a massive amount of water that's coming off those hills. So to even consider rezoning this without doing an extensive environmental study would be just outright irresponsible. And then, again, bringing 200 more cars, bringing more school buses, bringing more fire department, bringing more police into this neighborhood, it's just not realistic in maintaining any of the small town feel that we have in this neighborhood. Now, this may be slightly irrelevant to this point. I don't really know how y'all do business, but I think we're all pretty clear that there are many other well-suited areas of the county where a development like this could go up. Maybe not here in the city limits, because I think we all know the city limits are a little bit weird when you start looking at the map, as far as what the annexing had done in the past. But in the county, without a doubt, there are other areas that are much more suited to a large, multi-home, 3-story apartment complex. On top of that, the point that Marshall brought up is terrifying. If you're going to put somebody in a 3rd-story apartment, the onus is on all of us to give them some element of safety. And if you're talking about a 30 or 45-minute response time to a fire, that seems incredibly irresponsible as well. So, in the effort to preserve what Jasper is and the small town environment that we have and the safety of our community and the people who want to move here and live in a small town environment, I would urge all of you to reconsider this and deny this zoning change in this area.
Thank you. Now, we have not considered, we're in the process of considering, so we won't be reconsidering. At this point, we're listening to everyone.
Yes, sir.
Then we'll make a decision. Okay, and I think I had one more back here. Yes, sir.
My name is W.R. Hu. Born and raised up here. Left for a while, came back unfortunately. Needed rezoning. I've got a couple of points here, things I've thought of and y'all might want to consider, and the developers. As you know, the traffic downtown Jasper is atrocious now. If I didn't have a long-term relationship with the Jasper Pharmacy, I probably wouldn't go down there unless I just absolutely had to. And I use East Cellar Street usually to cut through, even though we have a home on East Cellar Street. But I know that the Department of Transportation has been planning on running a one-way pair through Jasper, and they've done some surveys. Do y'all have access to that? Because if I'm not mistaken, it goes right up near the northwest corner of this property. There's a very little property in between it there. Have you got that stuff in the Department of Transportation?
We do have access to the Department of Transportation. They've been talking about that for years.
I know.
At this point, I don't know, Mr. Pooh, when they're planning on doing anything. We'll probably be one of the last to learn that, but we reach out and we are in touch with them, you know, quite often.
Well, that was my employer in a previous life, so I know, I'm familiar with that. So
Okay.
I've talked to them a little bit up here, and every few years, you know, it comes on top burner and then it goes back down again. So hopefully it won't be too much longer, the way I understand it, especially when the traffic gets a little bit worse. And y'all want to put pressure on them and get your representatives on them, they'll do it. But anyway, that's it'd be great if you could have access out to that, this property up there to that, because if they're still planning on running it down back to the church, is what I'm trying to say here. And something else came up today. Mrs. Williams, that lives down there, she's not here. She called, afraid that the tornado was going to get her while ago. But she brought up something today, and she was going to bring it up tonight. She lives at the lower end of this property, and she mentioned a few years ago, I know the city, we were needing water real bad, and there's a drill well right back of her property. When they tested the water, they couldn't use it because it had oil in it. And I remember as a child back in the 40s, there was a service station up there, and back in those days, everybody threw the transmission fluid and the oil out in the nearest pipe or ground. And then there was a car lot there for up to recent times, right above that, and I think they did a little repair work too. And that ground that's got any stuff like that in it, man, if the, I've known people that went bankrupt when we were widening roads, where they discovered an underground tank in Italy. One little family lost everything they had, felt sorry for them. But anyway, that was something of her concern, that you may have some contaminated soil in there, and that's a big, big no-no. But she mentioned that, and I don't remember what the highest rent figures that quoted the other day. Was it 14 or 17?
14, sir.
14?
Yes, sir.
You know, that gets you about with today's interest rates, about a $250,000 house on it, I think. But everybody's got their own lifestyles they have to live, I guess so. But anyway, I just wanted to bring up the thing about the traffic, because it's already bad, and this is going to make your flow downtown. And I've heard a lot of, it ain't old people like me that's trying to avoid downtown Jasper because of the traffic. So we go out, and I know your sewage is a big issue, but the city does own a good bit of property out here on sewage now, down 515 and all, so there is some other land around here with it. And I would hope in the future that the sewage problem is addressed up here, because that's a major thing.
Thank you, Mr.
Get some
Booth.
good clients. Thanks a lot.
Appreciate that. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am?
Sorry, I'm Nicole Dixon. I'm at the corner of Cox and Effie Street where the proposed egress will be. And if we haven't made enough facts and valid points with numbers and figures, I'd like to appeal to the emotional side of you. Each one of you has walked by there, gone by there. You've probably seen the big pine tree. That's actually Joe John's childhood Christmas tree. It's a piece of history. You know, we bought that house from him 5 years ago. We've lived on these cellars previous to that. You know, this is a big development. You know, there's a reason we came to this community, to Jasper, Georgia, to downtown, and it's because it's quiet and it's quaint and it's a great place to raise our children. With the traffic flow, you know, you are seeing the 2 children that will be impacted by that traffic. You know, fencing will definitely have to go up. And one of the most beautiful lots in downtown Jasper, where the Joneses, the Rue family, our family, the Goodrum family all have beautiful few acres that are untouched, and now will have to be segmented off for safety from cars. You know, you're taking away part of the charm that attracts people to Jasper. And that's not something that we can quantify. It's not something that we can put on paper. But I just ask you to drive down there tonight or tomorrow when the sun comes up and see the spring blossoms at Andrea's house. Consider the people. This isn't just about the numbers, but this is about the people. And it's going to be a huge sacrifice on one of the most beautiful little blocks that we have.
Thank you, Mr. Golden. Marshall, did you have something else, sir?
Just one other thing I just wanted to say. As far as, you know, when you're considering infrastructure, you know, besides just that, because, you know, I just happen to think, you know, let's just say I'm thinking of it from a fire department standpoint. Your service in this area, they have, you know, an engine weighs 42,000 pounds. A ladder truck weighs double that, so you're looking at 80-something thousand pounds. The infrastructure is definitely going to have to be, you know, looked at, and just to make sure that it's going to be able to handle that, especially from the access from Effie and Cox Street. Just with all the issues that we're already, you know, we're having right now. The other thing, just piggybacking on what this young lady over here said, you know, is I work in a city that has lots of multi-purpose structures, and we do, I mean, it's not just, you know, something that you hear from people. I mean, most of our calls are going to be to these type of facilities. It's not a pretty thing, just to be honest with you. Even the nicer ones in the area, you know, and it's really close to it. It's a nicer area on the outskirts of Atlanta. Even the nice ones, you still have a lot of issues like that. But then, you know, just to get everything to where we need, let's just say, okay, we overcome all those things and the fire department gets updated, police department, all these things. How does that trickle down and affects the taxpayers that live in the city? You know, we're already paying county taxes and city taxes, you know, how's that gonna affect? You know, our city taxes just went up recently. And, you know, how's that gonna, all that is gonna, you know, affect us as well. So just speaking for the taxpayers of the city as well, you know, just wanting to make that point.
Thank you, Mark.
Yes, sir.
If no one else? Sir?
Just to speak, my name's Charles Rowell. My wife and I live on East Sellers, right at the corner of Cox. And I'm just wanting to say this is a terrible idea. We really wouldn't enjoy being the drive-by zone for an egress from of 100 or 200 cars twice a day and school buses, and it would just completely destroy the serenity of our neighborhood. We've already got race cars going up and down Sellers, and it's just not a good idea. We're opposed.
Thank you, Mr. Rowe. Yes, ma'am?
I just wanted to add, being that we do have a business on Main Street, there's not enough parking for what we have now. And I even know that these apartment complexes will be close to downtown. I can just about promise you that most people will not walk to downtown. They're going to get in their car and they're going to drive to downtown and go to a restaurant. And we don't have enough parking now. So I don't know what we're going to do with 200 more cars looking for a place to park. We can't even get parking for our patients most of the time. We have to go park in the gravel parking lot behind the bank and walk across the street to get to our office. So that's another concern that I have.
Thank you. Mr. Seeger, afford you an opportunity to speak before we end this session.
Yes, sir, thank you very much. And I do appreciate hearing all the residents' concerns. Couple items, and I probably won't get to everybody. I wasn't taking notes, and I apologize. I believe city fire marshal would dictate the height with the city, because, you know, in our world, you know, city fire marshal's right underneath God, right, when it comes to building. So city fire marshal says, or city fire chief says, you know, this is the height, that's the height that we go with. That's not something, you know, I don't take it from anyone else's word but that individual. For the environmental issues on the site, we will conduct a phase 1 environmental. We're still, you know, that's something that I have to do. Any bank requires it. If we have anything that includes an historic look back, sir, about 60 years. And so, you know, well, I mean, so yes, it's 70 years, so they're going to pick up whatever was there, and they're going to be able to look in to see, you know, what contaminated soils are there. And he's right, if it is too contaminated, it does make it economically non-feasible to move forward, and I would step off and I would leave. I do believe that if we did improve, I think I said it was Cox, with the runoff, Ms. Childers, I do believe, so we would be curb and guttering it. Currently, y'all don't have curbs and gutters, so the water just kind of splashes off in y'all's yard, which is one of the concerns we do have. That's one of the things why the city does require any new roads to have the curbs and gutters. So we would actually be improving some of that water runoff for you in the future. Now, I'm not saying that this is the plan we're going with, or like I said, you know, we can even do this, but if we do go this route, my intention would be that the curbs and gutters should resolve a lot of the runoff issues from the rain. Actually, my associate and I are going to drive by to go see what the river is like, because it is a concern. I mean, I think that runoff being on the low part of the land is going to have to do some, and I do have a very good civil engineer, that he would have to make sure we retain, I believe, it's the first inch, maybe more, of every rain. Does anyone know? Usually it's first inch. City of Atlanta will do a first inch and a quarter, which is a lot, but we will retain first inch of every rain on our site. That's something that's, you know, required that we would be doing. Every response we have as it relates to storm water, we would follow obviously city ordinance. We would not have any runoff into our neighbors. If we did, we would be evaluating it and resolving it at our expense, like we know. It is a beautiful city, it is a beautiful area. Other parts of the county don't work for this affordable housing. You can't, they don't score. I know this because I tried it last year. I don't think, that there's going to be, this isn't some kind of windfall of, I'm the first of 50 coming through. Generally, because it's a limited allocation of resources, they want to spread this across the state. We get one in Jasper, you're not going to see another for the next 5-6 years. That's the way it works in the program. I would very much be interested in just, working, I guess, continued with the community to make we can find a winning solution for everybody. But the same reasons that the people love living here are the same reasons we want to build here, because the people that are living in our community love this neighborhood as well. There's not a massive influx of multifamily. Like I said, I never said that there was massive growth in Jasper. I said the exact opposite. That since 2008, y'all have had one multifamily development, that's it. So it's not like I'm asking y'all to get ahead of the times. I'm asking y'all just to, what I think would be fulfilling a current need, not anticipating future needs. So thank y'all very much. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions by council? Okay. At this point, we'll move on with our meeting. And item B, which was a request to rezone, has been requested by the applicant to table, and that is hereby tabled. Item C of our public hearing.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Before everyone leaves, just to make sure, the previous item A, is scheduled for the mayor and council regular council meeting April the 5th, whereupon further, discussions or due diligence may be presented. It will not be an advertised public hearing. It is a public meeting, whereupon you are able to attend and to listen, and if there's any available public comment, you may do so, but it's not a public hearing as this format affords. So just wanted you all to be mindful of that. And Mr. Mayor, due to the fact, Mr. Seifert can confirm, because it was an advertised public hearing on item B, I think we have to recognize if there is anyone here, even with it being tabled, they can make public comment on item B. If not, then we can obviously move to the next public hearing. Thank you.
Okay, so was anyone in the audience here for item B, which was a public hearing to rezone 2 tracts of parcels located on West Church Street?
I don't think so, sir.
They're
all for you.
They're all here.
We also have some.
You're the star. I'm the star of the year.
Oh, yeah.
And if we have some on Zoom, would you speak up, please?
Y'all take that road down after you cross it. I got my back.
Thank you.
I'm doing that. That's why I'm not.
You know what?
We will,
There was a chat.
we will recess for
Daily about
3 minutes.
so I took a screenshot.
Stand recess for 3 minutes.
I need to speak. Sorry.
Somebody wants to speak. Somebody wants to speak.
Oh, I was just saying, you have it on chat. I'm Carrie Wentworth, representative from 175 East Cellar Street, and we will not be selling our land to provide access to Cellar Street for the item A. That was it, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you will, please come to order. We're back in session. Item C of our public hearing is a text amendment to the zoning ordinance and a sign ordinance of the city of Jasper. So we'll ask Brandon to bring this to us. I think Lonnie is out on another place he has to be.
That is true. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council, and for the public. As previously discussed from item A, this is another public hearing whereupon we have met with the Planning and Zoning Commission on Tuesday, March the 23rd, to go over to the text amendments staff is proposing for the zoning ordinance and sign ordinance. You may recall that as of February 1 of this year, we had approved and begun implementation of our new zoning ordinance and sign ordinance as two separate entities. However, as I've articulated before, as with any growing and maturing organization, and as we continue to make some changes, change is constant. I do not set it and forget it. And as such, staff evaluated a particular section of the zoning ordinance and sign ordinance and thought it was prudent to move forward with some recommendations. As such, in your packet, you do have the staff report that was presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission, as well as the update. With respect to the staff analysis, we are looking at amending section 94-96, subsection B, subsection 1 of the Jasper zoning ordinance. This pertains to the design standards with respect to exempting aviation projects at the airport. At this current time, we do not have that in there, so staff is looking to amend that to allow that to be an exemption. Additionally, section 95-26 subsection D, we are recommending to strike that from the sign ordinance in so much as the illumination of the flag prohibition. At the time of both of these, as with any change and modification and document, this was something that staff did not identify at the time, but as such, we will go through the process to, I guess, come to y'all and ask for your favorable consideration. Public hearing was held. There was no one who spoke in opposition to this, and as such, the two commission members did find favor in moving this forward, and we just ask for your consideration.
So is there anyone here who wishes for the public to speak to the text amendment to the zoning and sign ordinances? If not, then I don't think we vote on this until Monday.
This would, this particular public hearing, if there's no one here and y'all have any questions, staff would present this to y'all at your April 5th meeting, so a week from this coming up Monday.
All right, great. That's what I thought. Insurance. And we will vote on this. Item D is consideration of the appointment of Will Tate to serve on the Planning and Zoning Commission. Council, I present Mr. Will Tate to you and ask for your consideration as including him in our Planning and Zoning Board. I believe him to be an outstanding citizen of our city and our county, but I'm appreciative of the fact that he is willing to serve on one of our most important boards. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to approve Will Tate for a Planning and Zoning Commission.
So moved.
And I need a second.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Question,
Question?
if I may ask Mr. Tate.
Sure.
Could you give us a little bit of insight of why you believe this position is important to serve our community?
Well, I attended the Tuesday hearing and saw, what the importance of presenting a sounding board for the community to discuss their concerns and act as not a gatekeeper because it's not a decision-making body, but just to have a different perspective to present to the council and present our recommendations based on what we hear and what we've discussed, what we've heard from other people in the community.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion by council? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. And Mr. Tate, you are welcome. Now we have to come through a little bit of a legalese here.
I will warn you, I was on that for a number of years.
I know what's coming at you.
But I ain't getting skinny, that's for sure.
Well, we appreciate you serving.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so there are a couple things that have to be done. I'm going to read this, and I'll ask you to state your name in full, and then at the end of it, I will ask you if you will affirm it. Okay? So, I state your name in full.
William Reginald Tate.
Do swear or affirm that I will well and truly perform the duties of member of the Planning and Zoning Commission to the best of my abilities, and will take only my lawful compensation. I do further swear or affirm that I am not the holder of any unaccounted for public money due this state or any other public subdivision or authority thereof, that I am not the holder of any office of trust under the government of the United States, any other state, or any foreign state, which I am prohibited from holding by the laws of the state of Georgia, and that I am otherwise qualified to hold said office according to the Constitution and laws of Georgia, and that I will support the Constitution of the United States and this state. Do you please affirm?
I do so affirm.
And the state of Georgia does not trust you without a loyalty oath. So I'm going to read this loyalty oath, same thing. I will read it, I will say I and state your name in full.
I, Will Tate,
a citizen of the city of Jasper, Pickens County, Georgia, and being an elected official of the city of Jasper, Georgia, and the recipient of public funds for services rendered as such employee, do hereby solemnly swear and affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of Georgia.
I do so affirm.
Welcome to the Planning Commission.
Thank you, sir.
And before you leave, I'm going to put you with Tara.
Oh, sure.
She's going to take this and let you sign a couple of places and give you a copy.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Will.
Thanks, buddy.
You'll have to move that. That's fine. Okay, our final item of the evening will be a discussion of the American Rescue Plan. And I think this is information that we're all so very interested in. And this will be brought to us by Brandon and also by Bear Boy Ryder. And there she is in all her shining glory.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council, and for the public and for Zoom. This particular item, staff wanted to give you an update. Will probably be the better, I guess, disclaimer instead of a discussion, in so much as there's not a whole lot to discuss at this moment. I will say that as of Thursday, March the 11th, 2021, President Biden did sign the American Rescue Plan Act, which included a direct allocation to local governments in the $1.9 trillion measure. Now, what this means for the city of Jasper is we are scheduled to receive proceeds. The challenge is, ever since March the 12th of 2021, nearly 600 cities and 159 counties in Georgia alone have been very much interested in learning how the U.S. Treasury, who is tasked with promulgating the rules and regulations on how those distributed funds will be used. There are very few details that have come out of Washington with respect to our discussions with our partners at Georgia Municipal Association and the National League of Cities. However, there's at least enough information that we can confirm and provide to you all as the decision-making body, the elected officials, the representative democracy of this city, that we will receive some monies. And it will be different than the CARES monies that we had received last year. In so much as the CARES monies came through the state, and those monies were basically reimbursable, meaning that we had already had to have spent those monies. The easiest way that the state advised all the communities to essentially do was to say, well, we've incurred X amount of public monies throughout the onset of the pandemic, so therefore here is one or two items that would be considered reimbursable, and it would go back into their fund balance to help offset some shortfalls. The CARES money specifically was not allowed to be a revenue replacement mechanism, whereas the preliminary information out of the ARP monies is that it could potentially be used as a mechanism to replace some revenue, as long as local governments have not cut back taxes as of March 3rd of 2021, I believe is the date. So, there is a forward-thinking model with not the time sensitivity as the CARES brought on. We had basically about 30 days to act. So most jurisdictions just said, here's some paperwork that matches the amounts of monies that we were scheduled to receive through the reimbursable, and that was it. This one is scheduled that as of March the 11th, there's a 60-day time period that the Treasury is supposed to get out the rules and regs, and then we're supposed to receive 50% of those monies probably within 30 days or so thereafter. Then the next 50% would be in 2022. I believe all proceeds would have to be expensed out by December of 2024, I believe is the preliminary information they received. I will tell you that any dollar amount that is being suggested through any spreadsheet, website, etc., is probably close to what we would receive. However, I'm not in a position where I can confirm what that amount is. Unfortunately, I do not want to set expectations that we have zero control over. So, I will tell you that we do stand to gain more than the CARES money, probably double thereof. I do feel comfortable saying that those monies most likely in the measure will be double than what we've received last year, at least in the 2 installments. This does afford us the opportunity at least to begin thinking about how those monies can be allocated. We had already, pursuant to a planning retreat in February of last year at Chat Tech, as well as this year, January 2021 on Zoom, we had essentially identified a lot of the different projects that we needed to accomplish. And I will tell you, I feel confident in saying that in my 2 years here, some of those projects are going to be eligible for whatever monies we have to spend on, because there were a lot of needs identified. Everything from a personnel salary pay scale review, all the way to facility upgrades and issues that we have. We have begun working on some of the fleet maintenance. So I do feel comfortable that even though we did refinance some debt last year that had been on the books for a while, we could potentially utilize these monies for some sort of debt pay down. It cannot be used for pension. That's one of the few areas that they had stated that would be prohibited is the pension. However, I'm not so bold as to state that whatever rules and regulations come out, however they decide to regulate that. I'm not hedging my bets on saying that we would be able to utilize that towards pensions. I will tell you that with regards to salaries and or pay scale, the reason why there are those type of prohibitions is because your pensions, in effect, are considerable. So for instance, if we hire an employee, that employee's pension, along with health benefits, workers' comp insurance, etc., can cost the city up to $20,000 per year for just that one employee. So I think that is why that provision is there, is to so not to absorb all of the monies that local governments may receive, because there is a difference in public-private nonprofit worlds with respect to requirements that we are obligated to fulfill are somewhat different than some of our other competitors, so to speak. So with that, I did want to also point out that there was a provision to allow for some water, wastewater broadband capabilities. So I will tell you that that was a specific provision that they identified preliminarily as being eligible. So I do not like to speak too general, but because it has now been a couple of weeks, and we may very well be another 4 to 6 weeks away from definitively knowing, I did not want to spring something on y'all that, hey, we need to really pull out of our memory banks what priorities we had set with respect to all those measures, and how are we going to address what is being told to us we can spend these monies. I think it's very exciting. I do think that it's, once again, the name of it is the American Rescue Plan Act. I think it is affording the opportunity to take a couple of years and to address things that otherwise we had identified as a need, and to allow us to continue to progress towards those measures. So with that, I did not present the National League of Cities presentation, so forgive me for going off script a little bit, but that's basically the summarization.
So I have one quick question, and then we're going to open up for council, but if I understand correctly on this, as our council has previously considered our issues of raising our minimum salary range, is this something that this might allow us the opportunity to do?
I do not know. I will tell you, Mr. Mayor, that the complexities associated with this measure, as well as our own, we don't think of Jasper as being complex, but even our own pay scale in and of itself is something that I would have to defer to Beverly with respect to, we essentially have 3 categories of employees, if you will. Obviously, you have your general fund employees and your enterprise fund employees, but take those aside, just 80 or so employees we have, the way that they are paid out with respect to their annualized salaries is predicated on number of hours worked. I'll let Beverly just kind of illustrate a little bit about the 3 types of hourly type employees we have.
Beverly, thank you.
Yes, okay. As Brandon said, we have 3 classes, if you will, of hourly employees. And this is determined by the Federal Fair Labor Standards Act, Federal Wage and Hour Law. We have employees that are 2,080 hours a year. We have, those are non-public safety employees. We have 2 categories of public safety. The police are allowed to work 2236 a year, and the fire are allowed to work 2756 a year. And that's based on their shifts. The fire department has 24-hour shifts, the police department has 12-hour shifts, and non-public safety employees have 8-hour shifts.
Can I get you to repeat that figure for police and fire, the number of hours per year?
All of them, actually.
The number of hours for non-public safety, 8 hours a day employees,
Right.
are 2,080.
And for police?
For police, they are 12-hour shift employees, and their annual is 2236.
2236, and our fire department?
The fire department have 24-hour shifts, and their annual hours are 2756.
2750.
6. And that's just their base pay. Anything above those hours, we're required to pay them time and a half. And I just did a quick look before today's meeting at the statistics from 2020. The fire department had an average over the 11 employees that we have now of 330.33 hours of overtime. And that's at time and a half. And the police, 330 hours of overtime a year.
Per employee?
Per employee. And the police department, of their 14 that they have, each department has a vacancy. And I picked those 2 departments because they are the largest and most costly when it comes to personnel. The police had an average of 157.5 hours of overtime. So if you take that and come up with the average, the base pay for police was, with a $1 increase, is $40,486. That is the average. The average for the fire department with a $1 increase is $38,356 a year. That does not include overtime. And as I stated, the fire department has an average overtime of 330 hours each per year, and the police have 157 and a half per year.
What was the police again, one more time?
The total with a $1 increase would be $40,486.
So that means that we would increase our,
That's an average over the 14 that we have on staff.
okay, so if we look at the city as a whole, is there, could you sometime get us a figure for what that $1?
I already have that. The one, sorry, I loved our new software, by the way. Just the one,
We are starting to.
the $1 increase just on base pay citywide is $167,908.
So if we go up $1 to every single employee, raise the rate, raise our minimum $1, it costs us how much at the end of the year?
That's just on base, not including overtime. It's $167,908.
Now, Mr. Mayor and Council, the reason why I kind of kicked it over to Beverly in terms of finances.
Well, I don't blame you.
A lot of times from a general operational standpoint, very seldom will I disagree with the fact that we want to continue to explore and find ways to adjust our employees' pay. I still stand firmly behind the comments I made upon my arrival February of 2019 that I'm going to continue to push for that. However, I'm going to continue to be mindful of presenting to you all a fiscally conservative, balanced budget. Now, I do think that there are opportunities that perhaps this particular measure could afford us, insomuch as if it's not a direct allocation to a pay scale addressing, it could allow us to pay down some existing debt. That in and of itself could be utilized for. We had identified all the various needs. I do think that we have done a good job in addressing those needs, especially since the onset of the pandemic of March of 2020. And you all pretty well put together about January of 2020, so you didn't figure it all out in 2 months. So we'll hopefully get there. Those numbers that finance provided, I'm always nervous with her providing those numbers because overtime is something that I support, but it is something that I also try to help the department leaders manage. They will tell you at times that I will look at monthly financials and look at the percentage of overtime. And when we have vacancies, we have to fill in those vacancies. We still have a service to provide. So it is not something that is as simple as saying, well, control the overtime. I have to be realistic that I don't get too terribly upset with overtime as long as we're getting things done. But it does pose some challenges that we are competing with the private market in so much as expectations associated with annualized salaries. As I stated earlier, any cost implications to an employee relative to an adjustment has a trickle-down effect to those benefits such as the defined benefits, workers' comp, etc. because it's set on a particular pay. So the numbers that finance has provided is not reflective of the total hit. You've heard me possibly say 200,000 before because I have to deal in very broad general numbers because usually that's about where we're at with respect to a slight adjustment of the pay scale. Once again, if you are looking at our pay scale for a typical 2,080 hourly employee at the bottom of the scale, you're looking at just about $21,000 a year base. So therefore, if it's costing me $20,000 worth of health insurance, defined benefits, workers' comp, that one employee is costing $40,000. I do think that we need to address the pay scale. And I do think that this may present an opportunity. I do not know to what extent, but I thought it was important enough to provide you all an update on the ARC, because as we continue to receive information, the fortunate part is we will not be on a shot clock like we was with CARES. We should be afforded the chance to identify the measures as laid out by the planning retreats and to say, how can we fit this in and address these issues? Similarly to the way we've done the fleet maintenance, is refinancing some existing GFA debt, got a better interest rate, utilize some of that capital for reinvesting into vehicles and redistributing amongst the fleet. That's how you do it. I don't really have a magic formula for creating something out of nothing. I can hopefully help manage it, but beyond that, I would hope that you take anything that Ms. Ragland says, with my disclaimer at least, I don't know. So once the true implications are felt, what we're going to receive, what we can do with it, all the other deficiencies we have to address. So I don't want to say that was a loaded question, Mayor, but I think it was a pointed question. But it is something that the employees have continued to earn their salary, working hard for us during this time. I think it's important for us to continue to identify every possible way to address those. But being mindful that got a budget to stay within. So,
and Congress passed the Rescue Act on the 11th of March?
Thursday, March the 11th, I believe, exactly 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Today.
And it was pretty well understood that would eventually pass.
Correct. We have been looking, we've been looking at this measure for about a month or so, around the February time frame, to looking at knowing that there could be some possible solutions. Unfortunately, in my position, I'm not afforded the chance just to speculate all the time. I can forecast and try to foreshadow, but I refuse to speculate on what implications may come out of Washington.
Hard to write a check on a promise.
Correct. Mm-hmm. So I do think that that's important. Beyond that, Mr. Mayor, I do want to stress again some of my points. Potential debt service, addressing facilities, investigation further into finances calculations, because I will tell you that it may not be a direct way, but there could be a way. And obviously some infrastructure improvements that we do know is needed as well.
And what about timing? I know that, is it just speculation at this point in time?
I do think that we are dealing with the fact that the Treasury has, I guess, been given the task of 60 days, and I haven't really seen any sort of amendment of that.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Max, we're going to be finished here in a moment. If you can stick around. Thank you.
So for about 2 weeks now, they've been going gangbuster. I will tell you that administratively, we still have a lot of tasks to do, so we're going to continue to monitor this. We do not have a heavy staff presence at City Hall, so we're trying our best to keep on track of it and reaching out to our cohorts. The charter being kind of done and over with has afforded us a chance to not have to look at that, but that was a really big opportunity for the administration to address 20, 30 years of that. Beyond that, Mr. Mayor, Council, great news. I just wish I had more specifics, but I think we're doing okay. And please be mindful that, do not forget that when I do talk to y'all about various services that may or may not be getting done, it is the men and women of this organization are working really hard and tirelessly. However, we are compensating them for their time. So I do not want you to be misled into thinking that we are not following the protocols. 3,300 hours a year is a pretty good annualized salary. 2,500 hours a year. We have very few, if any, persons who work 2,080 hours. We have very few that work 2,756. We have very few, if any, that work 2,236. That is the nature of it. So whenever you look at annualized salaries, you have to be mindful that whatever we set, be mindful of those averages that we have to pay along with the additional cost of that. It's very much warranted, but just be mindful.
Council?
Mayor, finance could provide the calculations discussed once you come up with a better figure. That would be appreciated.
I can do that.
I'm going to say 200. Just because I want to be right. And because Beverly knows that most of the time,
He's pretty close.
Oh, it's contest. I'm sure it is.
I don't know how he does it, but he does.
I don't sleep. And I do not work 2,080 hours.
Okay, well, yeah, you're a lot more than that, so. Okay, well, council, anything else?
No.
Thank you, Brandon.
Mr. Simon, I'll afford you the opportunity to thank you for being with us tonight. If you would say a few words.
Well, I'm glad that I was able to come and be here in person and be with y'all in person. Haven't been able to do that in a while, so that was nice. Always good to see you. It's a good meeting when I don't have to say a lot. So, and I think y'all handled the meeting well tonight and handled all the comments well, and it was a good meeting.
Thank you, sir.
Do we have a need, Mayor, for the executive session?
We do not. And at this point, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second.
Done.
All in favor?